Well, kids, here we are. Monday, April 13th, first day back after spring break. Doesn't feel much like spring anymore. We had a couple of nice days in there. Hopefully, you had as much fun as I did on spring break. I went to the grocery store that one time. I went on some bike rides, and like that was it. So, that's about all we have these days for entertainment. Um, but we'll get through it and we'll be better coming out the other side. So here we are back to work. If you remember from before spring break, we had just started what is weather, and we went over 5 weather terms. So just very briefly, I want to remind you of what those weather terms were. We talked about air temperature. Weirdly enough, air temperature is simply the measure of how fast molecules are moving. If they're moving fast, it's warm. If they're moving slowly, they're cold. And air temperature measures the speed of those molecules moving, whether it's in air or whether it's in a table or whatever it is. Another thing that we have talked about, wind. We spent plenty of time on that with the atmosphere, the moving of air in a certain direction. A new term last time was humidity, and humidity is the amount of water vapor that is present in the air. Keep in mind in the summer, um, when we feel it being humid outside and our hair starts to curl up and we sweat more, um, that's a result of humidity. Also, keep in mind, and this will be very important for our lesson today, that warm air, because it's moving quickly, has more space between the air molecules and it holds more water vapor. So when we look up at this picture and we show cold air and warm air, when it's warm, there's more space, more room for water vapor in there. All right. The next term is relative humidity. This is the one that we would hear about on the news. This is a measure of how much water vapor the air is holding compared to how much water vapor the air could possibly hold. So let's say it's warm enough that it could hold 100 grams of water, but we measure it and it's only holding 50 grams of water. Then that relative humidity would be 50%. It's holding half of the amount that it could possibly hold. So that's relative humidity. And then the last thing that we talked about, I believe, was dew point. We've all felt that dew on our feet in the summer mornings when the grass is wet or our bike seat is wet or our bike chain starts to rust. Dew point is the temperature at which dew forms. So when the air is warm in the day, it holds lots of water vapor. It cools off at night. When it gets to the dew point temperature, the air is holding all the moisture that it can possibly hold and it starts to condense. And when it condenses, that forms the liquid that ends up on our grass, on our windows, or on our bike seat. So dew point is a temperature at which dew starts to form. All right. Now, today's lesson, new stuff, forming clouds. How do clouds form? And if you look over my left shoulder, you can see the 4 types of clouds that I really need you to know. There are tens. I've got a poster in my room with 26 different cloud shapes, and there are lots and lots more than that. So I don't know the right number. There might be 30, 50, 100 different kinds of clouds. I need you to know 4. All right, and they are right here. So firstly, how do clouds, no, not firstly, here's the first question. Are clouds a solid, a liquid, or a gas? I will wait. Wrong or right? I don't really know. Unfortunately, a lot of people think of clouds as being a gas, and that is not right. In fact, that is the only answer that is not right. Clouds are either made up of liquid water droplets, or if they're high enough up in the atmosphere where it's cold enough, they're actually made of tiny ice crystals. So when you look up at a cloud, it's either tiny liquid water droplets or tiny solid ice crystals, but never a gas. All right. Now, how do those clouds form? Well, I hinted at it at the beginning of the lesson today. In the warm air holds more water vapor. And as it cools, they slow down, those molecules come together, and pretty soon they're full of water vapor and they can't hold any more. That's called saturated. And when they become saturated, the only thing that can happen is that condensation starts to form and we start to get liquid. All right. So, how does warm air cool off? Well, either from daytime to nighttime, which is how we see that dew form on the ground. But also, if you remember what happens to temperature in the troposphere, the higher we go up in the troposphere, the cooler it is. So, as the warm air in the summertime down here at the surface uh, collects water vapor, it can hold more water vapor. We also know that warm air rises. So, as it rises, it cools off. And as it cools off, condensation starts to take place and we get clouds that form. All right. So, when warm air cools, condensation takes place. Now we can look at, there are several examples here. This is just like a summer day. It's nice and hot down here and humid, and that warm air rises, and as it goes up, it cools off, and condensation starts to take place. Same thing can happen if it gets forced up a mountain where it becomes cooler. And then we have air masses that we're going to talk about later, but we have cold air masses and warm air masses, and when they collide, the cold air goes underneath the warm air, which pushes the warm air up. And when it does that, condensation takes place and clouds form. All right, so that is how they form. This is the part that I care about. These are the four, actually, it's going to talk about three of the types of clouds right here in this section. And later in the week, I'm going to have you maybe go outside and take pictures of the clouds. So I can know that you know these different types of clouds. But we classify clouds by their shape. First, the one that's right over here, this one, cumulus. A cumulus cloud is a nice, white, puffy cloud that we usually see on those blue sky days, where you look up at them and you might say, hey, that one looks like a hippopotamus, or that one looks like a pirate ship. But yet you're not there worried about being rained on. Cumulus clouds, they often are described as like cotton balls up in the sky. And again, when you see them, they're usually associated with fair weather. That means it's nice weather. When I personally say nice weather, I mean cloudy and warm, or I mean sunny-ish and warm-ish. That's nice to me. All right. So cumulus clouds are those cotton bally looking ones up in the sky. It would really make sense for me to have pictures for you right now to show you those, but for some reason I don't. So I'm going to do better about that later on, and maybe in your quiz I'll attach pictures of those. Stratus clouds. Stratus clouds form in layers. They are like flat, even sheets that cover basically the entire sky. When you look to the left and you look to the right and you look up there, and all you see is one giant cloud cover sky. Typically, that's going to be a stratus cloud. They form in layers. Stratus clouds sometimes mean it's not raining, and sometimes they mean that it is raining. And by the way, what color clouds typically are going to cause us to have precipitation? Correct. Gray, black, darker colored clouds. The reason? They're full of water. Sunlight can't penetrate through them, which as we look up at them, makes them appear to be dark because the sunlight is not penetrating through them. They're too full of water. The darker they are, usually we know the more rain that we're going to get. All right. So, cirrus, puffy cotton bally clouds. Stratus, layers or even sheets. And the final one is a cirrus cloud. And a cirrus cloud, again, we find these on nice days. usually blue sky, and they're way high in the top of the troposphere, bottom of the stratosphere, and they're actually made of ice crystals. They're described as thin and wispy and curly, right? You can kind of see through them. And again, they're way high up in the sky. So I realize that I have made a grave mistake here in not showing you pictures of those clouds, but I am going to do that. Well, I have Google. Let's try it. I don't know. Cloud types. Here, let's look. I don't know what's going to come up. Here's those cirrus clouds, those thin, wispy clouds that are kind of curly up in the sky. All right. I'm going to look across here. Here's that nasty old stratus cloud. And you look, it's kind of the whole sky is one flat, even sheet or layer of clouds. And here next to it, we have those nice cotton bally cumulus clouds. All right, so those are the three kinds that we talked about: cumulus, stratus, and then those curly fibrous ones over here, the cirrus clouds. You see how easy that was to find pictures of those? The internet is amazing. Use it for good and not evil. All right. Now, the fourth kind of cloud that you can see over my shoulder here is a nimbus cloud. And a nimbus cloud is associated with precipitation. All right. A nimbus cloud is any cloud that has that grayish or blackish color. Most times when we hear the name nimbus, we could hear of a nimbostratus cloud. That means it's a stratus cloud, a layer of clouds over the area that brings precipitation, like an all-day rain. But a lot of times we hear about them in the summer, cumulonimbus. And a cumulonimbus cloud is like that pretty cumulus, that puffball cloud on steroids, where it's big, it's tall, and at the bottom it's flat and gray. And when we see those clouds coming, we know that we're usually in for a heavy downpour or a thunderstorm. All right. So nimbus clouds are associated with precipitation. That's like 12 and a half minutes, which is longer than most of you watch my videos, by the way. You should watch them all the way to the end. There's good information in here. So with that said, I'm going to cut off that as being today's lesson, and there will be a short quiz associated with it. So make sure that you complete that short quiz. Remember, those quizzes are what we're keeping track of. You need to take them. You need to do, pretty decent on them, and that'll help us give you that passing grade for the week. All right. So with that said, I want you to have a great first day back from spring break, and I will talk to you tomorrow. By the way, don't forget, email, Google Hangout, Google Meet. If you need me, I'm available. So make sure that you do that. All right. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.